Whew. Morning, evening, and afternoon, people. My ears. Today is going to be the final day that I'm going to be talking about The Last of Us. Hello there, ALTYR. Hello there, Hemi. Hello there, Flat. Oh yeah. I apologize about this. And I didn't have the notification sound open, so I didn't hear the donation from yesterday. I'm so sorry, but thank you so much for the $50, yandere. And yes, I will be a millionaire if Carlos keeps saying the word power. Anyway, hello there, everyone. Jinyan, Yangning. Hello there, Mike. So, if the title does not entail, today is the last ever day that I'm ever going to talk about The Last of Us. I have sworn myself to never talk about Last of Us ever again, even if there's a chatting stream, because I have done that so many times, and pretty much every single time that I have had a chatting stream. So today we're going to settle the score, and everyone will understand why I'm so passionate about the game, and why it's so close to me that I just have that I just feel like I always have to talk about it whenever it's been brought up, or whenever I can make an example of. Fine, I'm here to show. Okay, good to hear that. Alright, now we shall move to the presentation screen. And in case you haven't realized, the music is a little bit different today. I have chosen one of the background music for The Last of Us as the background music for today. So yes, it'll be great. Ah, I see. Bakayasha, thank you for the 420. Yes, you can finally donate now. I fixed it a while ago, and I forgot to notify about that. But now, yes, you can now. Thank you so much for the 420. Okay, so now I've tried this multiple times now. If it's still blurry, then I'm so sorry. I'll try to zoom in if it's possible. So let me bring up the blackboard. Where is it? There you are. Okay. So, what I want to tell before we start is this. There are 3 installments currently that I want to talk about. That is The Last of Us 1, The Last of Us 2, and The Last of Us HBO series. They all have their separate topic that I wanted to talk about, and to simplify it, it's not like me thinking out loud anymore. I have compiled several questions here, if you can see. Here are the questions that we're going to go through as we go through each of the installments I wanted to talk about. But before we start, we need to address this first. I have not played The Last of Us 1 myself. That is very important today. And as for the other installment, The Last of Us HBO series, The Last of Us 2, these I have played myself. I have watched the HBO series, and I have played The Last of Us 2 myself. That's why you can see there is more questions for the HBO and the second installment. And for the following moments onwards, I'm going to make this a lot more simple by not saying the full name of The Last of Us. I'm going to say Lo from now on. So Lo. Okay. And to clarify, again, disclaimer, there's going to be a lot of spoilers in this. So if you want to play the game itself, I will highly suggest you to not watch the stream. It is totally okay for you to not watch the stream here. And because I'm going to talk about something that's some of the things that I will disclaim myself before. I will add the context to the best of my abilities, at least, and then address the points I wanted to address. Then that's it. I will not go further if needed. Did you play the first one's DLC? Yes, I did. I have played the. I have not played. I have seen someone play it before. That was let's just say this. I've seen it been played, but I have not played the main game because I thought it was a DLC, so I searched up the internet and watched someone play through it. But I have not played it myself. The main game I have not played it myself. But if you're talking about Left Behind, I can also talk about that too. That is also very important for the entire plot. Anyway, right. Let's go through the questions, shall we? I'm very excited, as you can tell. But like, Okay, I'm trying to make this as cohesive as possible because I know most of you over here does not, I mean, pretty much all of you, as I can tell, does not speak English as a main language, and that also shares the same for me. So I'm going to make this as easy to understand as possible so that it doesn't sound like I'm that always sunny in Philadelphia guy who just couldn't stop talking about whatever is on the top of his mind and losing his shit over a conspiracy board. So, okay. Now, let's go through the questions, shall we? Starting from The Last of Us 1, because I have limited knowledge about the game, the simple questions will be, why did The Last of Us 1 work? And if it worked, is The Last of Us formula going to be outdated if someone were to use the same formula in the story making to make another game that's similar to The Last of Us 1 in the current age? Is it going to be outdated? This is the two questions that we're going to go through, and you understand why I'm so passionate about this, because to be frank with you, the formula is very, very outdated and it's been very overused. As for the Last of Us HBO series, this is a little bit subjective, as I like to say, because the Last of Us HBO series is very, 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 very different from the game in multiple standpoint. Sound crack. We're off to a great start, ladies and gentlemen. And instead of in 1 hour mark for hydration, we're gonna go half an hour mark because I know there's gonna be a lot of talking. So yeah. And for the second question, it's gonna be, why does the show feel so different from the game? Which is very, very, very closely related to the first question. As for the last questions, is the show in the right direction? This is a little bit to connect to the second game, because for 30 minutes, not 10 minutes, Jesus. For the second season of the HBO series, they're going to adapt the second game. So when we get to the second game, you'll realize that there's a lot of problems with the second game's story, especially for the pacing and the theme and the tone itself. Right. So, that is very important, and we need to talk about that too. As for the last one, The Last of Us Part 2, this is a lot, so I'll go through one by one. Again, this is more like a stream essay for me, so feel free to express any of your opinions if you need it, or just leave it on the side at the background like all of you do for the video essays if you actually watch video essays, because I love video essays ever since it became like popular. It's one of my best genre of video making that I wanted. Anyway, back to The Last of Us 2. So for the questions, it's going to be, why is The Last of Us 2 has mixed received? Essentially means that why is it so controversial? And for what caused the conflict between the ones who disliked the 2 and the ones who liked it? We're going to go in and dissect why exactly is people so into defending it, but also at the same time so into hating it. And is the hate justified, and is the defend justified? And last but not least, the 2 has some fundamental problems, and can we fix it? That's where we're gonna go today. Right, start from the top. Everyone, buckle in, ready your popcorn, because I'm not going to repeat the things again in any of the in any of the streams for the foreseen future. I've beaten this dead horse for so many times now that I feel like if you're not getting annoyed, then you are a goddamn specimen, and I applaud you for your persistence. Turning on the first listening and championing opinions, great, because I do welcome all the opinions I can get, since for the longest time, and I mean the longest, the reason why I'm so passionate about this, and I'm so like talkative about this every single time someone brought this up, is because I cannot find anyone for the love of my life who has played the game and talk about these kind of things on my level of storytelling. Okay, no one knows what the fuck I'm talking about because of all the literature, the literary terminology that I uses. So please, this is going to be a little bit of a literature lecture as well. I'm going to go through all the things I'm going to talk about before so that you understand what does it mean. Right. Now that we know everything about what we need to talk about for this stream, let's go through the terminology, shall we? Every time this point you go, oh, that element was in low, we'll bonk you. Good. From now on, if I talk about anything related to low, like references, just bonk me, please. I can say about the first game in the series. Great. Fantastic. Alright. So, before we begin, let's talk about some of the things I'm going to talk about in this. The terminology I'm going to bring up a lot in this stream. And they're not that hard to understand, but you need to know how to apply them at first. So, starting from the first one, it's theme. So what is a theme? Think of it like this. Every single story has a message. Hey, Goofs and Gaffs, we just began. We're just talking about the terminologies I'm going to bring in for the entire stream. So buckle in, bring your popcorns, bring your drinks, because we're going to be here for a long time. Right, back to it. Themes. What is a theme? Every single story has a message. This message is important so that the story is consistent. What does it mean? For example, though part 2 is the thing is revenge. The theme for The Last of Us 2 is revenge, and the sub-theme, the sub-contextual is the uselessness or the inability of revenge. No matter how much you can receive the revenge, there is no outcome that it's going to be, well, let's say, rewarding to you. Revenge is not rewarding. This is the theme for the second game. Every single story has a theme. So remember this. As for the second thing, is tone. Tone is a little bit different. Tone is more like the attitude of the theme and how the story is told. For example, a story has a tone like, let's say, The Last of Us series. The Last of Us series is negative. It is dirty, it is sad, it is melancholic. That is the tone. It is an attitude. It is an attitude, essentially. So it could be happy. For example, most of the shonens these days are positive, or it is negative, but also at the same time self-aware. That is a tone. You need to understand what the tone is for the game. Right, now for the last part. Pacing. I swear to God, you can see my book on my right here. You can see the book. I've written down everything I needed to talk about. This is a lesson that I prepared, okay? And it is totally okay that you don't pay attention to or just leave it on the side, because I'm just really passionate about this. I need to bring this out and stop beating a dead horse. Right. The pacing. What does the pacing means? The pacing means how fast your story goes or how slow your story goes. If it's too intense, then people will get tense up. The players or the readers will get nervous. So it is very important for you to control the pacing, especially for video games. Very important. And I'm going to especially address this in The Last of Us 2, so remember this terminology, okay? Pacing is the speed of your story. Pacing is the speed of your story. If it's too fast, then people finish quickly. If it's too slow, then nobody finishes. There, I got all of your attentions. Good. Now for the last one, is called a story's structure. Now, what is the story structure? It is this. every story is supposed to have a ups and downs. We start from the bottom because we don't know everything. This is us. We start from the bottom and we go from the introduction. I'm writing all of this with my mouse, by the way, so if you can understand what I'm writing, then please let me know. We start from the introduction and we rise. We rise into the story. We get to understand the characters. We get to know what the story's about. We get to be attached to the characters that's in the story. Eventually, it reaches a plateau where it's your favorite words. Climax. Your climax. And when a climax happens, it is the ultimate time of the story. It is where everything is at stakes. The main character's dying, the villain is prevailing. They're trying to fight back. It is the final battle, and people finally prevailed. This is the climax. And finally, we have the falling action. Because the climax happened, the afterglow begins. I'm learning more from the VTuber in college. Good! I did work as a tutor before, so this is not something like strange to me. Okay, now we got after the falling, we conclude everything. We finish the afterglow. We finally conclude the final stories. The main character finally won against the bad characters. The villain is finally lost. Well, not lost if you're talking about the Saturday one. Anyway, if you don't know yet, please go to witness the cover premiere. Back to it. We got the conclusion, where the story ends and the happy ending, or in the case of though, sad ending happens. These are all the things that is very, very important for the story structure. Right. So now we know everything. Let's start from our first question, shall we? Or our first segment, which is The Last of Us, Part 1. Let's start with the first question, shall we? Why did The Last of Us 1 work? So to understand this, I do understand that most people in the chat have known the stories of The Last of Us 1. If you don't know, then you're basically living under the rock. But let me sum up a little bit. It is a story about a broken father who's in a zombie apocalypse. When the zombie apocalypse happened, he lost his daughter. And 20 years after the story, he became a hardened survivor, a smuggler in a post-apocalyptic world, where in a weird possible way he was confronted by a militia group called the Fireflies, who tells him to smuggle a girl. And that girl happens to be Ellie. Now, here is what the story begins. Joel, the father, has lost a daughter before. He was not prepared to open to anything. That is his character. He's a hardened and often very non-verbal character. Whenever he wants to do something, he always acts before he says anything. We can see this from, for example, the scene where Tommy, Ellie, and Joel are together on the horse, where Joel regretted on his statement when they were first back in the lodge, where we're talking about Joel claiming that Ellie is not his daughter. He reframed that statement because he felt regretful, but instead of saying that he's sorry, he instead just tells Tommy to walk off and reject him and carry on the mission to smuggle Ellie himself. We can see from this point of view that Joel is very hardened from the start. He does not want to open up to anyone, including the main character Tess in the first few chapters. He does not want to open up to anyone because he's too afraid to get hurt. And then we have Ellie on the other end of the spectrum here. Ellie is very, very different. In a sense that Ellie is completely opposite of who Joel is. Instead of this hardened survivor that's a pessimistic, that kills everything in his path just to finish another scrap of a meal for the other day, Ellie's just happy to be here. Ellie's optimistic. She still has a lot of hope in life compared to Joel. And this sense of joy is infectious, it's contagious to both Joel and also the player. Why do we talk about this? Because The Last of Us 1 worked with its dynamic and down-to-earth, authentic emotions. When we play the games, we experience emotions, and The Last of Us 1 is the most grounded you can possibly get. What does that mean? It is one thing to be crying, other thing to be mad. But when people understand your emotions and the reason why you're emotional about things, people can get invested. And The Last of Us 1 uses so many ways to manage to do that. That's why The Last of Us 1 worked. In so many ways, you see, in this post-apocalyptic world, people are contradicting themselves. Joel is a pessimistic individual, but in the end, he does the exact opposite of what he's supposed to do. He killed so many people just to get to somewhere that's finally fulfill a task that Tess forced him to carry on this journey of. Just a heads up if you don't know, Tess was bitten in the early chapters, and Joel and before Tess dies, Tess tell Joel and Ellie that they must finish the mission for her. And Joel did exactly as that. He went through the entire state just trying his best, killing dozens of people and infected people. And by the way, I really want to talk about this too. The infected in the game is not dead. They're just infected people. Just think of how terrifying it is. I remember this cutscene that I saw before. It is a full pile of infected runners devouring a single body. And one of the runners was eating, and then she was crying at the same time. She was like, she was like this. And that just hit me hard. That was so good. Like, 10 fine acting. You know that they're in it. Heck, the girl may be eating someone that she knows. You don't know that. But it is a story that's been told without words. Anyway, back to it. So now we know why The Last of Us 1 worked. But here's the question. Wait, hold on. The gray area in The Last of Us 1 is enormous. That's right. There's one thing that I really wanted to mention, and that is that nothing, and I mean nothing, is supposed to be black and white in the world. This applies to not only post-apocalyptic in our real life too. This is coming from the bottom of my heart, really. And there's a lot of people who want to see things as black and white, right or wrong, but in reality, a single thing always have different perspectives. That is why it's so hard to say what's right and wrong. And people has been trying their best to highlight this gray zone, this moral gray zone that that's just true to humanity, but it's so hard to portray. But The Last of Us 2 and 1 portrayed it perfectly. Man, the problem I have there is just so much I can chime in on already. I mean, you can write down point by point and can try to like go back and answer about it or discuss about it. So it's okay. Right. So yeah, the moral gray zone. There's a lot of things that are in moral gray zone. Most things are in moral gray zone because there are different perspectives on different things in life. And you can't say something's right or wrong just because you think it's right or wrong. That's just how it is. There's only majorities right or wrong. There's never an objective right or wrong. Right. Now we know that why and how The Last of Us 1 worked. Is the formula going to last? That is the problem that we have in The Last of Us 1, because people say that The Last of Us 1 is not only a revolutionary work in the gaming industry, but also a absolute work of art in the storytelling industry. But does it stand? That, I say, yes and no. First, let's talk about why no. As I mentioned before, The Last of Us 1 is very grounded. The emotions are raw. The characters are dynamic and deep. Their decision making is contradicting, but yet it makes sense. That's the arbitrary rule of humanity. There's never a right choice, there's only patterns. If you understand a single person, that means you know the right or wrongs of him. You don't know what they will do afterwards if you don't understand what they're thinking at the moment. But here's a problem. These kind of emotions can only be so replicated so many times. Just like watching a meme. Like watching a meme. When you're watching a meme, the first time you thought it was absolutely funny as hell, but then you watch it a second time, still funny. The third time, pretty bad. The fourth time, you kind of find it interesting, but not that funny anymore, and then it becomes more and more monotone after you are completely numb to the story. The same thing goes to this kind of storytelling. There's only so much you can do with emotions. Just as there's only so much idea, there's only so much intuitive idea you can work with in the storytelling industry. So that's why I say yes, you can still make stories that have equal amount of impact, if not more, compared to The Last of Us. But the same magic cannot be replicated ever again. You cannot make it again. There is never going to be a second, though part 1. Okay. Whew. Right. Now we're finishing The Last of Us 1. That is the only limited knowledge that we have right here. Let's see. Oh yeah. Left Behind. The DLC Left Behind. I say that okay, I'm gonna combine this also with little narrative dissonance, because this is also important. I've talked about this many times now. So the first time you're going to know how it really works. Okay, little narrative dissonance. What does it mean? If you're not in when I talk about this the half dozen times, let me explain this. It is when the gameplay, that is not how you spell it. This is something that only happens in video games. You cannot do this with literature or written books, stories, because there's no gameplay in any other form of media. Let's say films. Films cannot be interactive. This dissonance only works in the ones who has interaction. So the ones who have gameplay. And as of right now, I feel like the only thing I have is either visual novels, like interactive visual novels, or video games. But there's only so much you can do with visual novels when it comes to interaction, other than just clicking a few buttons. So it's mainly focusing on video games here. It is when gameplay does not line up with the story's theme. I hope you remember what theme is, because we're gonna come back to this a lot. Anyway, little narrative dissonance. Best example. I've made this example many times. In the Last of Us series, we have a extremely satisfying gameplay loop. What does that mean? That means that every single shot, every single kill, every single hit in the Last of Us series is so meaty, so heavy. It is so realistic, but at the same time so brutal. It is satisfying. The gameplay is, in a sense, hold on. The gameplay, in a sense of The Last of Us, is satisfying. On there, Anna. Did you sneak more in The Last of Us than you did? Yes, I did. Wait, The Last of Us 2? You're talking about 2? If 2, then yes. I try my best to sneak every single time. But there's always a argument between sneaking and also if sneaking's really good for the health of video games. Take Payday 2 for example. Payday 2 has 2 modes every single map, most maps. And that is that there's stealth or loud. You either go in guns a-blazing or you go in stealth and try to do things quietly. The problem is stealth is considerably is always, if not, it's usually, if not always, more like easier than to loud things, because you don't need to have mechanical skills. All you need is map knowledge and positioning, which is something that's required for any other video games itself, gameplay itself. So yeah, if I want to sneak, I would, if there's an option for me stealth and they give us the option, then yes. Of course, it is usually slower, but if I have the patience and if it's an easier way to do it, then sure. But that is if it's like Resident Evil 4 where I always go in guns a-blazing, then that's the case, then I can't even do it anymore. Right, back to it. The Last of Us gameplay is satisfying. But the story's theme circles around brutality. Or why brutality is bad. The story theme of The Last of Us is mostly about the circle of violence. You can always choose the violence way. You can always kill someone just so you can have a safer path going through. But that's another life lost. And if you can avoid it, why not avoid it? That's one of the subtextual meaning of The Last of Us series. It's true. Many of the characters in the game does not kill because they want to kill. Joel does not want to kill just because he wants to kill. He wants to get through and ultimately reach his goals. He's only merciless because he needs to do that. Yeah, I was saying that to someone that wanted to fight him. Good point. This is going to be very not understandable for you guys then. Totally get that. But get this. Brutality is not something that that is enjoyable in a story's theme. But however, the gameplay encourages the satisfying gameplay, because if it's satisfying, of course you gotta do it over again, right? If you can either sneak right through it and not fight anyone, which is boring, it just contradicts the reason why you play the game in the first place, or go in with a shotgun and blow someone's upper body off, of course you gotta choose the latter, right? It makes sense as a human being to chase stimuli, which is the reason why ludonarrative dissonance is a very big problem for The Last of Us. Okay, now we got that out of the way, let's get back to the main point. Now I got a question for all of you then. I mean, I already know the answer, like most of you want to fight fucking flowers, so I'm not even surprised if you answered yes. If you're given the reason, okay, for example, you're given a scenario where you either there is a full squad of men in front of you. These men are all have wives, family, and a life. But however, this is a very moral question. You either take a long route which is going to take you months to go past, or you can take the easier route, which is to kill all of them in 30 minutes, and you can reach your goal. Which one would you choose? It is months of your times compared to a few people's a few men's life. Which one would you choose? In a video game scenario, like, say if you don't kill them, then you're going to wait for another few months just to play the video game. Yeah, of course, it's rational. It's rational, like, decision. It's supposed to happen. So this is where you really have to control your little narrative dissonance. And this is also the only problem that I have with The Last of Us Part 1. It is noodle that if you take the story in play, but you also take the gameplay itself too, it doesn't really fit. That's the only problem I ever have with Last of Us 1. Dude, music starts playing. Holy shit. Okay. Right. Now, on to The Last of Us HBO series. Whew. Before we start, actually, is there any questions or anything we wanted to go through? Isn't it humane to ignore the fact that other people are also people? I'm a subject first. My survival takes priorities, months of resources just to spare people I could and get rid of it easily. When you put it that way, then yes, of course. But then this is really comes down to something that's very, very, very unique of human. And that is that we can choose to be selfless. It is an option that's in our mind. That is not something that's normally in play in other animals or in other species. We can choose selflessness. It ultimately comes down to your values. Really. It ultimately comes down to your values. So yeah, any opinions or debate point that you want to talk about for the first part, The Last of Us 1? It took us 45 minutes just to get through the first game. I don't even know how long this stream's gonna be. Okay. The choice is a luxury, and the situation needs to benefit me in such a way that it allows me to be selfless, though. True. And let's just say this. If there's ever an example in video games that's fully portray everything that we said before about the values of life and self-contradiction, then it is The Last of Us. We see everything from Joel and Ellie. Joel went against what he thought before. And he was the hardened survivor. He does not want to be open, but when he opened, he's still himself. Yet, he's trying his best to grip onto that last bit of hope that he has. And it's great from him. At least for me, like, okay. In my take, at least, this is my own opinion. Every single human's mind has this big circle of value. It is true. People changes. People changes. But our value doesn't change. It changes with the values that we have. What does it mean? When you see Joel in the early game prologue, you see how selfish he was. He, both in the HBO series and also in the game, he drive right past a family who was in need. He went past everyone and try his best to save who he loved. he is selfish. This completely shines throughout the entire games. He kills countless people. He ripped out 1 million people out of his entire planet. With so diminishing population there is already, he still kills hundreds just to get to his goal. And when he gets the chance to finally have this daughter figure again, he decided to be selfish again. This is his value. He's always selfish. Joel is always selfish. From the beginning to end, this is his character. He's always selfish, and we can see it from him. He has this fundamental value inside him, and he hasn't changed since. Okay, that value does not change. It is a moral compass that he abides to throughout his entire storytelling. So yeah, and it was portrayed perfectly. They know what they're doing. Like, holy hell. Everything that I said was a analogy created from the game. That is cool. That is fantastic. That means they done it right. Wow. For me, like the twist of the good storytelling in the post-pop. Yeah, true that. Oh yeah, I also have Fallout 4. Maybe I should start playing that game too. Yeah, I also love the Fallout games. I played Fallout Las Vegas, I think? Vegas, like, yeah. And I didn't play 4. I couldn't afford it. The world took everything from Joel, and Joel took exactly. I never saw Joel's story of losing Sarah in his arm or the band of Joel in his personality. I would think of him as the bandits they take down. Of course, yeah. Like, to other people, he's just another survivor that's in their way. But same thing goes to him, and he took it, absolutely. The humanity of the contradiction in humanity, the arbitrary rules of one's thought and conscience and value, and how they contradict themselves by being selfless but also selfish at the same time, is perfectly portrayed in both Ellie's action in the second game and Joel's action in the first game, which I absolutely applaud to. This is going to be a complete wet dreams for the first game throughout its entire stream, but don't worry, the criticism is going to come up real soon. Right, let's get to a lighter tone, shall we? Let's talk about the HBO series. Sorry for the first question. Is The Last of Us HBO series a good adaptation? Now, hold on, let me bring the book. Give me a second. I got a different book. Okay. If I can find a page at least. This is one of the textbooks that I bought a while ago. He's going to whip out the Bible. Okay. So, to understand this question, first we need to understand this. What makes a good adaptation? What makes a good adaptation? Oh, that's horrible. Okay. So, according to a famous writer called Edgar Allan Poe, he laid out 3 qualities of how an adaptation is supposed to be good. And let me read that out for you. It's supposed to have brevity, single effect, and beauty. And let's get through it one by one, shall we? Brevity means it's short enough to experience it in one sitting and not feel like a drag. Single effects means it's a uninterrupted feeling towards the story. And finally, beauty is the flair to it, that the author who made the adaptation interprets it. Right. So does the HBO series does it? And I feel like it does. It definitely did. It is a good adaptation. However, whew, here comes all the things we're gonna talk about, and I'm talking about this like a broken record. HBO series is a good a good series, but at the same time, a not so good adaptation too. Now I know I contradicted my own term here, but just understand it. Just bear with me here. Okay. So there's a lot of things about the HBO series that is done right, that is faithful to the materials, the original materials. But at the same time, some changes are so far and delivered so differently in the adaptations that it's not the same, and it just feels different compared to what it's been given out in the game. Take for example one of my favorite interactions, the arguments between Ellie and Joel in the hut, where, okay, if I can remember the line, I have actually rehearsed this line before. It is a line where Ellie goes, everyone I have died, everyone I have cared or loved for has either died or left me. Everyone fucking except for you. Now this line is very important in the delivery, in that Ashley Johnson's delivery in the game is sadness, depression, frustration, and desperation. In the game, you feel that Ellie is trying her best to earn Joel's trust. She's frustrated just why Joel shut her out after all this time. The frustration is in the everyone fucking except for you. That sadness is shown in that delivery. Let us listen to it a little bit, shall we? Let us find it. In this line.
Maria told me about Sarah.
Ellie?
Okay.
You are treading on some mighty thin ice here.
I'm sorry about your daughter, Joel, but I have lost people too.
You have no idea what loss is.
Everyone I have cared for has either died or left me. Everyone fucking except for you.
You hear that?
Or left me.
You hear that?
Everyone I have cared for has either died or left me.
Her voice is shaking. She's not confident. She's desperate. She's sad. She's depressed. She's frustrated. She's desperate. That is the delivery in the game. Yeah, in the game. But then you hear the parts in Ellie's Bella Ramsey's adaptation to it.
Don't say another word.
I'm sorry about your daughter, Joel. But I have lost people too.
You have no idea what loss is.
Everybody I have cared for has either died or left me.
That is so much different from who Ellie, like, what Ellie was trying to portray in that scene in the video game. It is so much different.
Everybody fucking except for you! So
There-
don't tell me that
There is vigor.
everybody fucking except for you!
There's vigor in this line.
Either died or left me.
There's no trembles. There's no sadness. There's no frustration in this part. There's no desperation in this part. There's only anger. That's all I can feel for this scene here.
Too.
You have no idea what loss is.
Both Joel and Ellie in the HBO series sounds like they're frustrated. They're angry of each other. They're not sad for how both of them act against each other.
Everybody I have cared for has either died or left me. Everybody fucking except for you!
That's what made the difference. It is so portrayed differently that it's not the same thing. But at the same time, get this, it's not bad either. It is, in fact, the first ever curse, ever time that the curse of video game adaptation being bad, that's finally been broken. I feel like the HBO series is a really good adaptation. It's a really good show. But at the same time, it doesn't have the nuances that the game delivers in all the line deliveries and in some of the ways that the characters portray themselves. Most of the times, we see Joel being vulnerable and trying his best to find somewhere that he can seek comfort in the show, where we see multiple times that Joel got panic attacks, where he broke down in front of Tommy in the show too, where these things never happened, even if you include Joel in the second game. It never happened because Joel is not meant to be emotional. He never really laughed out loud like he did. He was practically wheezing in the HBO series when Ellie was talking about the pun book. And that feels slightly out of character for me after getting so acquainted to Joel in the show. I mean, in the game. I'm never impressed with the performance of the be stream series nowadays. I never even get my hopes up. If you put that in, of course, yes. But then here's the thing though. All this would have changed if my principle is not laid on top of the fact that I know what the game's about. If I have actually watched the HBO series before the game, then I will tell you that the HBO series is good. It's good. It makes Pedro Pascal's portrayal of Joel humane. He's a human being with emotions. He's both hardened. He's wants to shut people up at the same time. He couldn't stop himself from actually feeling emotions at the same time. It is emotionally draining to see him being in this struggle state, which makes sense. That is the whole point of the story. Is the fact that we need to explore this post-apocalyptic apocalyptic world in the eyes of Joel. It makes sense. I think Pedro and Bella said, production told him. Yeah, I also heard about the news because they don't want Pedro and Bella to like replicate the portrayal of Troy Baker's and Ashley Johnson's acting in it. Hydration, posture check. Ooh. So just from this, you understand that Neil Druckmann's direction with the adaptation is not to one-on-one adapt the video game. Yeah, but why? Let me tell you why. Everyone sees the horror film, The Shining, right? The infamous, "Here's Johnny." We all seen that movie, right? It is a abstract novel that was adapted to the film. But if you read the novel before, you realize it's slightly different from the film's adaptation. Why is that? Because there are things that's not possible in adaptations. Some of the things that are so limited in shows or movies adaptations that you can't put it in. If you do so, then it makes no sense. If you just recall from memory, just don't search for the Shining's movie clip, by the way. Don't show them. Don't search it up. Just think from your memories. It is very, very, very much of a fever dream, right? It doesn't make sense in any shape or form. You don't know why he went insane in the first place. And all of a sudden, you have this villain that's like the best villain in the entire century all of a sudden. It doesn't make sense. But at the same time, it makes so much sense. However, here's the stupid part. There's actually two The Shinings. There's the Shining movie that we know. And then there's also The Shining that is one-on-one adapted by Stephen King himself. Search it up. It's actually a thing. It's actually a thing. Hold on, let me resume the music. Stephen King actually made another film himself. That is a one-on-one adaptation of The Shining. And it is one of the worst received adaptation that Stephen King has ever directed. Yeah, oh yeah, Doctor Sleep is also a really good one too. And then you realize that it is never our intention. It is never our intention to adapt a material one-on-one to movie or shows, because if you do that, the material is going to reign supreme in all the weird way possible. Some of the things just does not make sense in the cinematographies. Yeah, yeah, oh yeah, he hated that goddamn show. So it is never always a good idea to always one-on-one like adapt something just because faithfulness. Like, if you go into a filming school, like this has also been told by Craig Mason too, in the Chernobyl podcast. He talked about if you go to the film class, then I'm sorry. Oof, Jesus. Mothball. In the film school, the first thing they ever tell you that if you wanted to adapt something, don't put materials in just because it's historically correct. If you wanted to make something about World War II, then make things in your interpretation. That is the most important part. Make things in your interpretation. You don't put materials in just because it's historically correct. That's why Chernobyl is good. Because if you put everything in, put every nitty-gritty details into a single film and call it saying it's accurate, but without sending a message with that accuracy, you made a meaningless scene. Every scene in a show needs to be meaningful. If it doesn't send a message, it is redundant. That's just how it is. And here we are, at the HBO series of The Last of Us. Is it good? Yes, it is. We can look at it like this. This has been told in the video essay from The Closer Look. If you wanted to go watch that, I'll link that in the description after the stream's over. You can go watch that. In The Closer Look, he said this: if The Last of Us Part 1 is the Draft 1 of The Last of Us, then the HBO series is the Draft 2, the revised version of The Last of Us. And that makes sense. There's a lot of things that's done right in the show that makes sense, because it just feels off in the game too. And yeah, it does make sense. So it comes down to this. Why does the show feel so different from the game? Because it has to be. As I told before, the adaptation is never to be one-on-one because, well, you're not supposed to put that on one-on-one in the first place. And also, it is the right chance to be different at once. Why does it feel so different? Oh, I feel like dying hose here, sorry. Whew. That is what they're trying to do. It is supposed to be a different experience. It is not a end. You're not supposed to play the game and watch the show. You're supposed to play the game or watch the show. You don't need to do both at once. The medium is different. It has to be different. Yeah. Each medium here is different. Right. Now it comes down to the final question. Is the show in the right direction? Now, before we start talking about this, I do want to talk about a few things about the show that I have problems with, as I have a grudge over with the first game too. And that is that, who the fuck greenlight Catherine's storyline? Like, okay, everyone who has watched the show, please tell me, is any of you enjoyed the Catherine episode where Sam and and Henry and Joe and Ellie was being chased by this Catherine soccer mom person who has the entire city of militias chasing after the crew just because her younger brother was killed by Henry? Like, who buys that? That is the only weak point that I feel like for the entire show. It's just they made the soccer mom a ultimate villain that's even worse than Joel, who's meant to be the villain, the anti-hero that we have trouble liking with. And then there's Catherine. Like, it's supposed to be this hyped up character who's like the top of this militia, this bandit team that has so much power that's like threatening Joel's life so that they have to run into the sewers for that part. The game had exciting gameplay, so we give the series this. Yeah, it felt forced. It really did feel forced. I don't know what they were thinking about that, but that was the only weak part I feel like in the entire show. Aside from the deliveries, of course, but that comes down to the fact that I know the game. I've not played the game. I've known the game. So I will feel a dissonance between what the game gives my feelings of and then the show gives me feelings of. Let me just get back to the clip too. Aside from Ellie's delivery, this part also troubles me a little bit.
Don't say another word.
I'm sorry about your daughter, Joel.
Just listen to this line from Joel.
You have no idea what loss is.
I also have a problem with that line too. Let me just get back to this real quick. That line it felt forced. It felt like acting. It doesn't feel natural. But that's only because I've heard about this line in the game. In the game, Joel, when he emphasized about it. He emphasized about the fact that Ellie does not know what loss is. He went, and I quote, "You have no idea what loss is." He slowed down during that dialogue. And that is important. But the Joel here didn't do that.
Sorry about your daughter, Joel. But I've lost people too.
You have no idea what loss is.
He didn't do that in the delivery. And I feel sad for that part too, because that's one of my all-time favorite part of the entire game.
Be safe for somebody else, because the truth is...
Alright, hold on. This line is also important from Joel.
You're right. You're not my daughter. And I sure as hell ain't your dad.
That is way too fast. I'm so sorry, but that is way too fast for my take. In this scenario, both Ellie and Joel is passionate. They're meant to be passionate. So they're supposed to stop their speech. They're supposed to slow down, taking every word that is in the show and tell them, you are wrong. Okay? That is the point of this time. So don't speed it up, please.
And I sure as hell ain't your dad.
So yeah, as you can tell, I have a lot of problem with it. I don't like Joel's "don't say another word." It's so weak. Yeah, it really does. Like, that line was replacing Joel going, "Ellie," yeah, and that's so important. But it's not showed, it's not emphasized in the show, and I'm so disappointed in this part. Yeah, I thought he was scared of it going on. Yeah, Joel's supposed to be warning and forceful in his part because he's very insecure about this. Just over wants to wrap this conversation up ASAP. Next scene. Sadly, that's just don't get the wrong idea. I really love the portrayal of Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey's portrayal of both Ellie and Joel in the show, but compared to the game, there's so much substance that's lost in it. So yeah. Right. Now we can finally answer the question. Is the show in the right direction? Now, there's two sides of this that I want to talk about. First is what's already existed. Is what's already been shown in the season 1 in the right direction? That is a yes. It is in the right direction. And the fact that it paints a different picture of the same story, well, without it being over the top or without being a completely different. It still respects and still being faithful and consistent about the character of Joel, just in a different way. But this is the more concerning part about season 2. Now, I don't know what will happen for the season 2, but if they're going to have a right direction, I hope to God that they do not go the same part as The Last of Us 2. They completely revamp the story to a complete different storyline. Because if they follow the same story premise and leave the same outcome to Joel in such a short period, like just from the pacing, right? If you talk about the chapters, the first episode is a prologue, and the second episode of the season 1 is what was it? Boston quarantine zone. And if you follow this pacing, that means that the season 2, Joel is going to die in the first episode or the second one. And that is going to be a problem. That is going to be a real problem. If you wanted to know the problem I'm already seeing, call me cynical if you will. But nowadays, they don't know how to stop. As long as there's money to be made, they'll keep going, for the better or worse. I would say yes, in some senses, of course. I mean, just from the fact that I totally get your mentality here, because I late again. Nah, it's okay. We only been this is a stream essay that's supposed to be a something that you replay again. So don't worry. If you're missing something, then you can have this on the back of something when you're doing your assignment or you're working out or something like that. You can put it in the back, because this is a full cognitive, cohesive storyline of us trying to talk about the stream, our essay points about this. So yeah, don't worry, you can play back on this one. Right. As for your point, your point on that, I can totally tell about this. Like, I feel like this trend happened after Stranger Things, and that is that you know how like they try to squeeze every bit. They try to squeeze every bit of the cast's charming side to trying to grab some quick bucks. Like, you can tell. You can just tell from all the episodes ever since the HBO series starts, from the HBO channel on YouTube. They tried their best to try to have all the cast ask like everyday questions, trying to build up this content creation role to let the actors, let Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey to be this like content creation guy who answers questions, do Q&As, talk about the creation of the game, of the series, and even bring in Troy Baker to talk about the story itself. They're trying to just grab this opportunity as the best of their abilities. And it's so obvious. It is sad. It is so sad to see that. I think they might do the back and forth between Ellie's and POVs. Neo explained the game didn't do that because it would disrupt the upgrades. I feel like that's something that they can just overlooked with gameplay, really. Like, seriously though. The upgrade doesn't really make sense in the first place. Like, really. Seriously. So, like, maybe just don't focus on that. The stories always comes first, especially for a title that's called The Last of Us. You don't really focus on the gameplay before you focus on the story, okay? Hello there, Jimmy. So, like, him saying, oh, it's going to disrupt the gameplay and it doesn't make sense in the gameplay, then to that I say, like, bashing someone in the head and breaking the baseball bat alongside with it takes an immense strength, okay? So maybe, just maybe, leave the baseball bat with like, what, 8 more durability hits? Maybe? I mean, I'm not here to judge, but if you want to talk about realistic gameplays, then let's start from here, shall we? So yeah, I don't think that the gameplay problem justifies changing the story's pacing, because I'm going to talk about this a lot for the second part of this. Part 2 has a serious pacing problem. Okay? It has some serious pacing problem. Alright. Now, we're on to the finale, and the most passionate part I have ever about this entire thing. The Last of Us Part 2, and why is it mixed received? To understand that, let's begin with this. We need to know the story first. The Last of Us tells the tales continuing what The Last of Us 1 happened. In the final part of The Last of Us 1, Joel finally delivered Ellie to the Fireflies, where they will be able to experiment on her to create a vaccine. However, this is in exchange of, well, Ellie dying. Definitely. And it is because of this, Joel made a decision. He decided to save Ellie, and in exchange of humanity, he finally has the daughter that he longs for the last 2 decades. 5-star stream, I finally finished preparing my mind. Fantastic, good to hear that. But in exchange of this, Ellie didn't know what happened. When Ellie woke up, all she knew was that Joel carried her away and told her that told her that there's half a dozen other people who are immune to, and well, that's a lie. But essentially, they grew up. Ellie grew up, and they settled down in Jackson, and there's a lot of fucking side characters, I swear to God. All you need to know is there's Dina, Ellie's love interest. There's Ethan, the third. Ethan? I think it's Ethan. Isn't it Ethan? Was it Ethan? I don't remember. The Asian kid. I don't remember. Ethan, the third wheel. There's Abby, who, oh my God, it's all the fucking problem here. Nanny, Owen, Mel, fucking so many people. And then there's Lev, there's Yara, so many side characters. That's part of the first existing problem, which is too much side characters. But we'll get to that later. Used to work in medical, and I'm 100% worried. Yeah, I also like saw this video essay from Roanoke, who talked about the immunity of Ellie. And there's many takes about this, because we all know that fungal infection is not exactly just... Oh, Jesse, fuck. Jesus. I thought about Ethan. I was like, who the fuck is that guy? Yeah, Jesse. Fucking hell. God. You can tell that he's just not an important character. That I forgot about the fucker's name. Okay. I'm so sorry for that part, but yes, Jesse. There we go. Back to the fungal infection part. Like, oh yeah, something about the first episode of the HBO series, the opening part. It's so good. That first part was like, it's not even possible to make them, and if that happens, we lose. That is an 100% goosebump line. That is done so well. Such a great opening for the HBO series. Oh, anyway, back. We're talking about the second game now. So, in the start of the game, I need to emphasize this very, very, very importantly. In the start of the game, the doctor that Joel killed after rescuing Ellie is actually a father of a main character of the second game called Abby. Because of this, Abby went on a revenge to try to hunt down Joel. She went from normal looking structure of a human being to a gorilla. By the end of her transformation, having this huge fucking bicep, just like, how do you even have that much gain? Like, Jesus Christ. Yeah, the talk show is such a great touch. And wouldn't you know it, in the first 2 chapters, Abby found Joel. And Joel, for some reason, lost all of his survival instincts and stood in the middle of the room and then called out his name and his brother's name, fully aware of the fact that he killed at least 300 people. 300 people throughout the entire first game, and probably even more between the first game and the second game, in between that period. Just tell them to go to Jackson with him. That makes perfect sense. Wouldn't you know it? Abby took that chance and killed Joel right in front of Ellie with a golf ball bat. Golf ball bat? A golf club. Jesus, I'm losing my speech now. Bashed his head in right in front of Ellie. And that left a distraught Ellie went on a revenge journey to kill Abby. The fucking music was on point. Right. So the entire story was just a back and forth of Ellie's revenge journey to hunt down Abby, and Abby trying to become likable but never was. Okay. So now that we know the story a little bit, let's talk about the things that we talk about at the start of this essay, because we need to know what went wrong, why people were hating about this. Which is the first question. Why is The Last of Us 2 mixed received? Is the story of The Last of Us flawed? Right, this is very important. Let's start with this, shall we? So to understand that, let's go through all the criterias of what makes a story. Right. First, a theme. What is the theme of The Last of Us 2? He needs to die for the plot. Opposite plot armor, indeed. The theme is the uselessness of revenge. It talks about the cycle of violence, where in the end, nobody wins. Nobody wins. And that is the point of the entire thing, is to tell the audience that Even if you revenge someone, even if you avenge someone, finally, does that really make you the better person? Does that really heal the wound that's been caused in the first place? Sure, the wound is always going to heal after you leave it for a while. The scar's going to last. But is revenging that wound going to leave away the scar? The answer is never. There's always going to be a scar, and all we can do is look at the scar and move on. That is the theme of The Last of Us 2. Now, remember this. Okay, take notes, people. Remember this. This is a very important point in the entire thing. This is very important. Because this is the entire premise of the game. However, it is executed extremely poorly. Right. Now we know the theme. Let's talk about why is it executed poorly. It's because Abby didn't fucking die. Now, right. How about we talk about this rationally? Okay. Rational take. We don't just go with the fact that Abby doesn't die. Yeah, sure. There is a way to fix this without Abby dying. However, people need to understand this. A storyline is a build-up. Although it looks like a straight line, of course, it has ups and downs. As mentioned before, there is an introduction, a rising action, a climax, a falling action, and last but not least, a conclusion. When you want to educate people the uselessness of revenge, then you tell them that the revenge can only lead to sadness. Nobody wants to walk out a video game, finish the video game or film or a literature to feel frustrated. That is the last emotion that you ever wanted to experience as a consumer. Remember this. Frustration is bad. That's not how you... Frustration is bad for a story. If you leave a story feeling frustrated, then that's a bad story. What you're supposed to feel like is sadness, is to feel powerless, is to feel like you know what it is and you don't have anything to do. Like, losing my words here. It's supposed to be sadness, essentially. It's supposed to be sadness, not frustration. So, what went wrong then? What is the problem with it? First of all, a character needs to have a build-up. We have spent an entire game playing as Joel, investing our time and effort into Joel, only to have Joel to be killed by someone that we barely know of at the beginning of the game, which goes like this. A normal, healthy story is supposed to go like this. It's supposed to go like this. But you know what The Last of Us 2's story goes? It goes like this. Now what the fuck is happening? Alright, let me draw it again. This time, actually. This is the structure of The Last of Us 2. It has two climax. This is gonna look so weird if someone joins in like randomly. It has three climax. And total of 1, 2, three rising action, rising and falling action. And only one conclusion. Now, anyone who has studied literature will tell you this is a horrible story structure. This is an absolutely horrible story structure. Because a healthy story is supposed to have a single climax. When you rise up into a climax, people expect a conclusion afterwards. They don't expect another rising action and climax. They're not prepared for it. I hope in the future when people skim through the VOD to see what this is about and they just ran into the... I'm gonna keep quiet. Stay focused, people. We're in class. Stay focused. Whew. Okay. Back to it. So, the climax is both... when Tommy is shot and Abby is about to face... Shit. That is not a Y. Abby versus Ellie. Yeah, let me just like... Yeah, just... A and E. A&E. Versus Abby versus Ellie. Where all of a sudden we just got fade to fucking black and we suddenly play as Abby again. And the second climax is finally when Abby versus Ellie again. We don't need this happening twice. A posture check. Hydrated. And the first one is where Joel dies. It's where Joel dies. Do you see the problem here? There's not supposed to be two climaxes. To understand about the story and why this is, you can dissect it into two parts, like this. In the first part, we played as Ellie. This is Ellie's part. In the second part, we have Abby. So what is supposed to happen? Okay, let me translate this into caveman language or to neural activation language. They build us up to a climax and then edge us to a conclusion, and then right up to something that we hate, and then try to raise us up to the climax again, looking at something that we clearly don't like. It's like trying to... Don't take this out of context. It's like getting edge with a category, watching a category that you never liked in the first place. I need to make a climax counter for this stream. Jesus. Yep, you should. In Star Wars Episode 3, and then there's 2 duels. Yeah. It feels weird. And not only that, this is from a fundamental problem. This is just looking at the structure. If you're looking at this and take in the story, you'll realize that you playing as Ellie has somewhat laid down his principles. You have played the first game. Your favorite anti-hero has just died in front of someone, has been killed by someone that you've never seen before, and you're mad about it. And then you played as a offspring of the character that you loved, rightfully seeking revenge, to the final point where they finally collide, and they just blue ball you. They just edge you to that point, and then blue ball you, and then tell you, hey, from now on, you're going to play as the killer. And what we're trying to do is to try to humanize this character as much as possible, and to tell you that this character is actually good, and no matter what, you should have. Joel deserves to die, or at least his death is justified. That is not how it works. You effectively killed a characters that we love, and then spend half a game trying to invest us into a character that doesn't matter at all. That doesn't make sense. That's why people are frustrated about this thing. That's why people said that the story is flawed, and why people hate Abby, because they're rightfully so. Abby is not a structured and invested character that we can relate to. She's a new character that went in the entrance. By the way, our first impression of the characters is that she revenged someone that we don't care about at all by killing someone that we cared. That's not an intention that we can get behind as a normal human being. Same thing as killing someone for someone that you love. It is a sentiment that you care for versus a sentiment that you don't. That's why Abby's character doesn't work in the first place. We can never relate to Abby in the first place because she killed Joel. Like, people say that the part where Ellie and Abby are fighting, and you're forced to be as Abby, and everyone, and I see every playthrough, including myself, that I played alone without any opinions aside. When that fight happens between Abby and Ellie, and I'm playing as Abby forcefully, I try my best to find a way to kill Abby without having a game over screen. Why? Because Abby is not a good character. She does not have enough build-up to be invested to justify her action to kill someone that we know and care for in the first game and the game onwards. Do you think Abby's story should be? No, absolutely not. The only way the second game can be fixed is if they completely revamp the pacing and the order of the game. If I do agree that Joel has to die to progress the story, because the theme of revenge cannot continue if Ellie is the main character. That's just what it is. That's how it works. If the only person, and we have already established this, the only person that's ever that by the way, Ellie has ever cared for has died or left her. Everyone except for Joel. So the only way, if they want to continue this theme of revenge, is to have Joel dies. That is the ultimate point. Joel has to die. But he's done dirty in that sense. And instead of him dying like a hero, he died not even as an anti-hero. He didn't have a valiant death. All he had was this disturbing, disgusting bash, this beat up that's just hard to watch as someone who's invested so much time with this character that we play so long. I'm getting teared up with this, I'm so sorry. Instead, we are forced to invest into a character that we never loved in the first place. You cannot justify Abby's existence because of the point that I have lost. Yeah, exactly. Because Ellie, yes, exactly. It was portrayed by Ellie in the first part. And if Ellie didn't do it, then what justified Abby to do it? And we have to force ourselves to for some reason relate to her and feel justified for her action. Like, how? There's no way you could have do it. That's why people hate it. And on top of this, by the way, oh my god, I'm losing my voice. This entire thing could all be fixed if Joel's death was put, if this action, this climax, is left to the last part. Or, for example, we don't know what happened before Ellie begins. So all we know is at the beginning of the game, Ellie's on a revenge trip. We don't know who died. Ellie refuses to talk about who died. And all we have is this cold-blooded Ellie who's not stopping by anything, and the only irrational or rational thoughts that's behind her was Dina and Jesse, who's pulling her back as best of her abilities and keep notifying her that you do have something to lose, you do have something that you care for. If you continue doing this, then you're gonna lose everything. And then by the end of the, and then also, instead of doing this fucking monstrosity, we completely change it that it is a flashback between Ellie and Abby. Ellie and Abby. Not have Ellie finish her side of the story and then continue with Abby's side of the story. You build two climaxes if that's the case. Instead, if you have them intertwined between each other, then the climax will be in the time where Ellie and Abby finally collide with each other. They fight to the death. Dina almost died. Jesse died from the headshot. Tommy was shot in the head, was left unknown about his fate, and the two of them were just about to finish the fight to the death, where Dina's about to die and Ellie's next, where Lev comes in, and at that point we will be invested in Abby's story because we've been through this together with Ellie and Abby at the same time. We know that this character is somehow likable because she's trying to help Lev, she's trying to help Yara, she's trying to get Owen back on track, she's trying to value friendship and the people that she cares for in the life and try to be the good person, only to realize at the final point that Abby, is actually the killer of Joel, where we can finally make this final decision. Do we kill Abby? We can make this decision ourselves. Do we kill Abby? However, it is at this point, make a completely conclusion. This point is dead on. No matter who you kill, no matter if Abby is dead or not, no matter Abby is dead or not, Ellie has lost a finger. When she comes back to the house, Dina has left her. Jesse's dead. Tommy is the only one who's left, and he's either hell-bent on killing everything and just as lost and desperate and empty as Ellie after this. That is the uselessness of revenge, taught right. Abby's death is never the point. It is the frustration about the fact that we didn't get to kill Abby after all these time that frustrates all of us. If we were to let us kill Abby, it wouldn't justify anything. The players don't need the characters to be sad about or to act like they feel revenge is useless in the first place. For us to understand that revenge is useless, we can kill Abby. Let us kill Abby. And then go back to the house where Dina's gone, Baby's gone, Jesse's dead, Tommy's empty just as Ellie. And then we'll realize that after all this time, is it worth it? That is a good conclusion. Not what we have now. We have now is this frustration. We started knowing Joel's death, and then hell-bent on the first part of the story, going hell-bent trying to find Abby, and then ultimately got blue-balled. Got blue-balled into Abby's part, and then suddenly just started to forcefully being like force-fed into the story, saying that Abby's actually a good guy, even though none of her action in the beginning of the story justifies her action. She's not a good person. And we established that before this entire chapter. Before they concludes another weird segment again, the story could have just stopped when Abby prevailed against Dina and Ellie, or there's there's a whole different outcome to it. There's a whole different way to finish this. But instead they chose another ending that feels so add-on for some reason. That, again, blue ball the fucking... Okay, right, hold on. Let me rewrite this again, but just let us focus about Abby. Abby's storyline starts like this. She killed Joel here, goes up, faced Ellie, and then for some reason goes down here for another story that's just bland with no build-up. So, kill Joel, versus Ellie, and then versus Ellie again. Why? This part is excessive. We don't need this part. The final part where Ellie was hell-bent on trying to find Abby again makes sense. It makes sense on Ellie's place. But it doesn't make sense if you want us to care about Abby. Because in this part, Abby is at the mercy of Ellie. So why do you force us to invest in Abby's part in the first place? Painting her as this fantastic person who only killed because her perfect father, who by the way is too force-fed to be perfect in the first place, to revenge because that's a probable cause, when we in the end realize it's not a probable cause. So what they conclude is this: Abby's revenge is useless, and it resulted to Ellie's revenge, and then it got all the way back to Abby's. So is Abby a good person? No. Then why do they put so much effort into this part? I'm getting way too like fucking angry for this one. I'm so sorry. I'm not even being like rational now. Like, why? This is just sad for this part of the storytelling. And for them to justify this as being disrupting gameplay because it doesn't make sense for the backpack part of the upgrade part. It's just the gratitude part is just so different. Yeah, it's enforcing the gray zone in the wrong way because it goes back. It's being hypocritical. It's not being contradicting. It's being hypocritical about Abby. They paint Abby to be the good guy, but also enforce the idea of uselessness and revenge in her. Why? Yeah, it really fell flat harder on his face the more they tried. Like, The Last of Us Part 1 was very subtle for its take on this in the contradiction between the characters and the dynamic interaction between the Joel and Ellie. But in The Last of Us 2, they force-fed so many things. And the penguin on the clap. Alright. I'm getting a little bit too, like, flamed up a little bit. Okay, so, like, there are different ways to fix this. My way of fixing this is to add... So, okay. I've told this now, so, like, just, again, this is a normal way we're fixing this. We don't know what happens here. All we know is Ellie and Abby that we played, and then at the end, it reveals that Joel is dead and has been killed by Abby. It's been killed by Abby, and then we got the choice to kill Abby or not, but it turns out whatever you kill it or not, whatever you kill her or not, it doesn't really matter because Joel is dead no matter what. That's it. Alright, let's get back to the questions and actually have rational answers. It's nice seeing you passionate about this. So don't worry about entertaining the stream. Yeah. Like, I really wanted the Last of Us to succeed. I really do, because I really love a dynamic story. To see different characters interact with each other, with contradiction, with dynamics, with ironies. That's the whole point of human interactions. To see that nothing is ever wrong or right. Because in the midst of rights and wrongs, the wrongs can be right. Because it's wrong. That entire sentence doesn't make sense. That's humanity. And to portray such humanity in such a disappointing way in The Last of Us 2 troubles me ever since it got released. And I feel really bad, just like, So, just get this. I'm just disappointed. I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. Okay. Let's get through the questions, shall we? Okay. So, why is The Last of Us 2 mixed received? Because the story is flawed. And the pacing is very bad. They did the pacing horribly. The theme is consistent. The tone is great. But because of the pacing and the characters, that completely made it horrible. Why do the people hate Abby? It's because she's trying to be this moral high ground individual. Is being this moral high ground individual that for some reason has this hierarchy on her morality, when in the first fucking chapter she killed a character just because of revenge. A irrational decision that's not even justified in the first place. Nious activate. Alright. If the theme of useless revenge is met, why do people still like it? Still don't like the ending. Sorry, the typo here. Still don't like the ending. To that I say, it was not met with sadness or conclusion. It was met with a frustrated outcome. Like, just let us kill Abby. That's the whole point. To say that, to the people who defend not killing Abby as also useless revenge, I'll just tell you, it's the third blue ball that we have for the entire game. We got blue balled when we switched from Ellie's perspective to Abby's. And then we got blue ball again when Ellie lost against Abby. And then we got blue ball the third fucking time when we didn't get to kill Abby. Again, because Ellie for some reason thought, oh, we are in the moral high ground now, so yes, that does not kill Abby. After killing so many people, so many WF soldiers, so many of Abby's friend, suddenly was like, you know what? Maybe, just maybe, let us just left Abby alone after killing all these people cold-bloodedly and leaving a family that is happy in the first place. It's just sad. Yes, there's no climax for us. There's only blue balls. They should rename it The Last of Us Part Blue Balls. I definitely feel like Neil Druckmann has a kink about this, because the same little theme also like you can tell that this is also a bit of a trend in the show as well. Like every single characters that we get to care about, including Frank and Bill in the third episode, is also Blue World. We get to care about these two characters, and only to have all of them died at the end of the episode. Like, desperation is just something that they really wanted to portray, but they portrayed it horribly. Really. And again, I'm not mad about this. I'm not saying that this is a bad thing to do. I'm just saying that they executed very poorly. Also, just to interject, but who thought it was a good idea to have a heavily pregnant girl out? Yes, like, fucking up. Who thought Mel going out was a good idea? Like, all of Abby's friend felt like a plot point just for Ellie to kill someone that's meaningful. Okay, this is another character trouble that I didn't mention, and that is that there's way too much side characters that we should care about in a game that we just couldn't care about. We had Owen, who is this rogue person that's supposed to be in love with Abby, that has this abusive relationship between Abby, who we don't even fucking care in the first place. So why would we care about Owen? And then there's Mel, who for some reason is like fucking 8-month or 9-month pregnant, but still out on a mission, knowing that there's someone after him after that diabolical act of killing someone with a golf club cold-bloodedly. And she's a medic too, so just leave the baby, conceive it, come. Okay? Jesus. And then we got Manny, this comic relief that's not even funny throughout the entire time. All I remember was him saying pendejo like 3 times. That's it. I don't remember him being anything other than just a side character that just suddenly died just to show Tommy is a cold-blooded killer. That's it. And he's supposed to be the comic relief in the entire game? I don't know anymore. And then there's Dina, who is essentially the Ellie from the first game, as opposed to... So, okay. In the second game, Ellie's like the Joel from the first game, and Dina is like the Ellie for the first game. She is this bright, optimistic, rational being that's constantly portraying the happiness in life, telling Ellie, who is essentially Joel in this scenario, to be there's still happiness in this life, and you don't need to seek the path of revenge. But she did it horribly to the point where when she said that she was pregnant, my first instinct was not say that, oh, I'm so sorry, that let us get back. She purposefully hid it, and then was angry about Ellie for not understanding her after it. Why? Like, that is just selfish. That is not a character dynamic. That is selfish, and it is inconsistent between her characteristic. So she is also a poorly written character as well. All the side characters are notable, sure, but they're not like good, like decently written either. Posture check. Hydration. Whew. Okay. We need to wrap this up. It's been 2 hours. Whew. Okay. Let us get back to the questions. We have a question number 2. What caused the conflict between the ones who disliked The Last of Us 2 and the ones who liked it? Is the hate justified? And is the defense justified? Now, I would argue that there is no conflict between the ones who dislike the one and vice versa. Why? Because the ones who dislikes it, especially the ones who know how to convey them, will definitely convince the ones who defend them. There is definitely a fundamental problem, an objective fundamental problem that exists no matter how much you sugarcoat this game. There's so much problems in this game that if you sugarcoat it, you're essentially gatekeeping it for me. it's like saying like hot sauce being not so hot because you feel like it's not hot. It's your preferences, and it's a hot sauce, okay? It's supposed to be hot. You don't say it's not hot because you don't feel like it's not hot. There's an objective and then a subjective fundamental problems. We're talking about this. The pacing is a problem, an existing problem that causes the entire chain reaction to why the game sucks. And if you defend that point, then you're not justified. But if you defend all these irrational, so okay, I'm gonna pause this for a moment because I do need to go to the bathroom. I'm losing my shit a little bit. I'll be back in a bit. Intermission screen. I need to go to the bathroom. I'll be back in a bit. Just remember, justifiable, hate, and defend. All these frustrations is blowing up my platter. I'll be back in a bit. Whew. Okay, I'm back. Now, I was like, I got into the bathroom, I sat down, and then I did the business, and I was thinking, and I realized, did I really just spend 2 hours talking about something that's so-called passionate in my heart? I don't think I've ever done that before. This is so cool. Whew. Okay. Yes, and I'm very proud of myself in a weird way, but right. Okay. So, we're back to the conflict between the ones who likes it and the ones who dislikes it. The biggest debate that I see online when the game first came out was, one of my favorite YouTuber is Video Game Donkey. He makes some of the most entertaining videos I've ever seen on the platform. And when The Last of Us 2 came out, I was fully predicting what he's about to say, because I know what kind of gamer he is. He's a very straightforward, on the nose character. And if something is complex or requires more of a specialized understanding, he will most likely disregard it or try his best to defend it in his own over-the-top way, which I don't blame them. I don't blame him. That's just how his character is. I'm glad to hear that because I also really love Donkey. Definitely did not quote, like, just because of him, I cannot, every single time I say fuck you, I cannot not like hear fuck you, Spider-Man. I cannot unhear that after that. Anyhow, the problem happens when Donkey face just hate comment about The Last of Us. Because here's the problem. These hate comments are irrational thoughts of saying, oh, The Last of Us is a horrible game, the story is bland, the other characters are horrible, they're not likable, things like this. That's just not true. Like, they lack the substance compared to the viewpoint of video games Donkey's viewpoint. So what Video Game Donkey did was he disregarded them. Yeah. Which is sad, because I totally get his perspectives. His justifications are great. Like, the Last of Us 2 characters are dynamic. They're not one-dimensional. The story is not as bland as people say, and the gameplay is definitely the focal point of the entire game. If you just completely turn off your brain, The Last of Us 2 maybe is your favorite game. Like, I'm being dead serious here. The gameplay loop is fantastically crafted, and despite being primitive for the first game, it is extremely satisfying, if not better, for the second game. Bye, Judy. So yeah. So this is, we're gonna come back to this a lot. I don't know if I can, but I will make this into kind of a series, like stream essay series. I know there's always the targeted audience is going to be a lot less, but it's okay. It is something that I wanted to make, and this doesn't really take that much time to prepare anyway. It's always like these kind of things I've been thinking about for like months or if not years on end already. I'm planning to make another essay about controller, like aim assist controller and mouse and keyboard play in Apex Legends, and why there's a comparison between the two in the near future, but not as in the near future, of course. So yeah, is The Last of Us remake for the PC a rush job to cash in on the boomers that watch the show? Unfortunately, yes. And if you go back to one of the VODs, you'll realize it succeeded on me. I pre-ordered the game and wanted to stream it, but it was optimized poorly. Like, yeah. The rest is history. I spent the rest of the stream playing other games, so it was a horrible idea. But like, okay, so my consensus is this: I remember that vividly. March 28th. Before that, I thought Resident Evil 4 was optimized well. It was a great game. It was a great remake, and I thought maybe, just maybe, if I can finish The Last of Us before I start playing Resident Evil 4. That didn't work. That did not work at all. I didn't bother. Yes. I learned that lesson and a hard way. But yeah. Truth be told, the fund that goes to The Last of Us pre-order was promptly refunded, and got to invest it into Resident Evil 4, which I really enjoy. So there's still a silver lining to it. Anyhow, yeah. So yeah, because I started it. The shader loading happened for 40 minutes, and I tried to get into prologue, and then the prologue crashed twice. I just gave up. Sadly. Diablo 4, oh shit. Do you guys not have phones? Our opinions nowadays of all the refund was the way, of course. It's just sad, man, because I never played Last of Us 1 and I really wanted to play it myself, but we have to wait for another month or so. But fortunately, and I have to appreciate you for this, and that is that you have funded our price to buy the game if the game is finally optimized well with that $50. Thank you so much. If the game is finally optimized well, I will play it, because as you can tell, I fucking love Last of Us. Heck, I like, of the list of games that I really love, the top of the list is definitely undoubtedly going to be Nier Automata. That's my favorite game, and I can also release a essay about that in the near future, if I can. But I need to replay that because I haven't played that in a while. And a close second and third is Last of Us 1 and 2. That's seriously. You're allowed to stream it to us, but not good. Today was the last time you talk about, of course, yes. Last time I'm ever gonna talk about this, but we're going to we're gonna stream it if that's possible. Yes, I get the refund, Mike. Don't worry. Let me just get back to the point real quick. So, like, right, most if not all the time, for all the online discussions about a certain topic, it's mostly fueled by a lot of irrational and just pure insulting defense and hate these days. Like, the people who hate The Last of Us 2 don't know why they hate it, because they don't have the words for it. All they can say is the character's bland, the story is flat, the pace, not the pacing is actually the reason. The character's unlikable. They can only bring up these surface level excuses for hate. And as Video Game Donkey claimed, and I quote, "Even the ones who hate the game don't even know why they hate the game." This line is true. It's very true, because they don't have the words for it. So here I am. This is the entire point, okay? Right. For the final answer, if you answered this already, could The Last of Us 2 be fixed? Yes. If we don't want to touch the story all that much, then the way that I did it was the most optimal way that I can think of, is to put Joel's death in the last part. Only let us know that Ellie's on a trip to kill Abby for an unknown reason. Don't disclose any of the reason, and then let us like Abby while Ellie's on this revenge trip. Let us relate to both of these characters until we finally clash the two characters together, and then finally reveal that Joel is the main purpose for this entire journey. And then let us choose if we wanted to kill Abby or not. No matter who we choose, it doesn't matter, because that's the uselessness of revenge. That is the best way to fix the story without changing it too much. All we changed it was to let us have the option to kill Abby or not, and change it so that we don't know Joel got killed in the first part. That's it. But if you want a complete revamp, then I highly suggest you to go watch the Closer Looks video about The Last of Us 2. Legit. in the video, she talked about how to remake the story in a complete different storyline, and that was also made extremely well. If you I don't want to spoil anything because that's another great video essay if you have the time to listen to. It is, I think, an hour and 30-minute long. You can just have it in the back while you do other things. I always do that. Video essay is one of the best categories yet. I can do so many things while listening to it. So like he also touched on this. He remade the story with a lot more effort than I do. So yeah, if you wanted to have another take on this, please go do it. I will have that link in the description once this is finished. Whew. Okay. Now this is finally finished. We have finally concluded the final debate and rant of The Last of Us. Let's get back. Okay. Whew. That was a long and great ride. I sincerely appreciate all of you for staying for this long. This is a material that I never really thought I could ever fit into a stream. 'Cause I don't know, it feels weird. It feels weird trying to squeeze this into a broadcast. Naughty Dog's game design is outdated. Yeah. That video is the sole reason why I have that question in the first place. Is to ask if that formula is actually outdated, and it is. Yeah. Well, that concludes the final rant of The Last of Us. From this point onwards, I will try my best to not talk about The Last of Us. We have talked about this plenty enough. It was a long ride, and The Last of Us is, quite frankly, the first ever installment that I truly invested in myself. Ever since I learned about the structures and the literature terminologies that I'm so passionate about after getting to college. Like, it's a sight to be seen. It's especially unique. It is not one-dimensional, it's always dynamic. So, yeah, I feel like the enthusiasm is justified, but at the same time, I also applaud all of you for staying this long and being on this journey with me. I feel like graduating or something. This is not even. I feel emotional about this one now. I'm so sorry. This is not graduation, by the way. Don't worry about this. So yeah, I sincerely appreciate all of you. This has been a fun journey, and I hope to do this a lot more with other topics. For now, I have things like controller versus mouse and keyboard in Apex Legends. This is a very niche topic, so depends on if you I want to hear it or not. I will make this into material. But yeah, that too, and then there's Niers Automata. So this feels like a graduation thesis. It really does. It's really fun, but also at the same time, like, oh, it's such a passionate project too. So yeah, thank you so much. The next stream is going to be on Friday, as you mentioned there, Yandere. It's going to be a getting over it stream. For the synapses, it's going to be me trying to get to the top of a mountain. Okay, I really don't think I'm going to finish the game in time. So I'm going to have a 6-hour mark on the game, okay? So past 6 hour, I'm gonna just stop. Because I know that if I pass 6 hours, and with spicy food, by the way, with it, I'm not gonna be in a good shape for Saturday's premiere with you guys. So of course, we're gonna have a 6-hour marks. Yes, I'll definitely come back with a part 2, definitely. So for for that, this is going to be Friday. Getting over it, swear versus spicy food. Hey, Chapa. Good time for you to show up. We just finished an entire essay about The Last of Us. Just don't. How many times have I cursed on this entire essay already? Just like, try to count that if you want to go back to the thing, to the VOD, and then compare that to the amount of time I said The Last of Us. And I guarantee you, the amount of time that I have said a swear word is going to be more than the time I said the word Last of Us. Like, swear word is just so expressive. So like, I just love it. Not much. I hope so. So yeah. Thank you again for following me on this journey. And I'll see you. Yes, we're already concluding the stream. And I'll see you on Friday, Jabba. Make sure to be here. Don't worry if you're late, because you're never late for getting over it. So like, yeah, just join me whatever you please. It's gonna be a 6-hour stream if we finish it, or if we don't finish it at least. So yeah, I'll see all of you very, very soon.